What is going on, everyone? Welcome back into Road Graders. I'm your guy, Cole Jackson, and today I am joined by a very special guest. It's Coach Evans, and we are going to be breaking down the 2023 Baltimore Ravens offensive line. Coach Evans, how are you doing?
Doing fine, doing fine. Happy to be here and talk about these road graders, and it's been a huge topic of discussion this off season. It's crazy how one spot has been so hotly contested.
It's been an interesting couple of years if you go back to the ebbs and the flows dating back to 2019 where they had such a dominant line and the injuries and losing Orlando Brown, the I'm a left tackle, and all the drama and the Alejandro Villanuevas, and it has been a grind. And I think getting Ronnie back was just such a huge moment, and it really shows how important left tackle still is, even though we're becoming a more diverse league, more shotgun. It's still that left tackle makes a huge difference. So basically, what we're going to be doing today is just kind of I got a lot of your questions on Twitter today that you guys want to talk about, and we're going to kind of go. I think we're just going to start on the left side and walk across because there's so many storylines going on with this offensive line. So let's start with Ronnie Stanley. We'll start with left tackle. And Coach, I kind of want to just pick your brain on Ronnie and when he came back last year. What did you see during your film study? And did as the season went on, did he get back to that kind of level that he can play at? And what are you kind of expecting from him this year?
Starting out, I saw a guy that was trying to protect that ankle. That his sets he wasn't sticking like he was sticking his cleat in the ground like he should, but it was more so like almost ease it in the ground and pound with the other foot. I'm gonna ease it in the ground and pound on the other foot. But he came off in the run game. So the run game wise, he was back to what I thought he would be. But pass game wise, it took him a while to get back to the fact where he would trust just pounding that ankle into the ground and doing what he needed to do. But later on in the year, he started back looking like all pro runner to me. With them cat-like feet and that quickness, and it's a couple plays where we like tossed the ball out and he ended up pulling. Like we down block with the tight end or record or something, and he ended up pulling. And he looked like the Ronnie of old before the ankle issue.
No doubt. And the thing that I think people don't realize with that ankle injury, so he dislocated it, and it's pretty common in dislocations where you can have nerve damage. And so from what I don't want to act like I'm a doctor. I'm not a doctor. But from what I understand is that every time he was planting his foot, and what I believe the cleanup surgery was to fix was to clean up some of that nerve damage, because basically every time you plant that left foot, which when you're taking kick steps, as you're going back, that left foot's planting every time. And that's exactly what Coach is referring to. So every time he was stepping, I think he was getting basically a shock of pain. And it was basically like, can you play through this pain all year, or do you need a cleanup surgery to try? And now from what I understand, again, not a doctor, just trying to, as I was trying to learn about this, I think he feels numbness. And so when he takes those steps, and what I find so interesting about your comment is he was trying to get used to what the hell does that plant foot feel like now. And so I think that's really what we saw. And as he got more comfortable, he started to kind of get back to his old ways. And I think one of the interesting things for Ronnie in a Todd Monken offense is we're going to probably see more zone concepts. And going back to Notre Dame, Ronnie Stanley, and what he does in pass protection, his athleticism is kind of what makes him so special. And that was something where, for so many years they were running, so much power to the right and running behind Orlando Brown. And as he caved in O-lines, it didn't really feature the run blocking style that Ronnie can bring. So as much as I'm expecting that, left tackle pass protection ability, I think more zone concepts, I think it can really show that elite level of run blocking that he can get to.
He's definitely when you run counter stuff, or counter or power stuff to his side, he's definitely a guy that I would love to see go get the backside backer. Yeah. He doesn't have any issue with sifting through stuff to get to the backside backer. And that's one thing that we've been able to do now that Lando is gone. When you got Morgan Moses, you got a more athletic guy. You can pull both sides now. Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier, it was just for the most part, it was Orlando and Yonder just wash the stuff down, and you get a puller from Bozeman. But now we can kind of pull both sides now. And then with the addition of Linderbaum, you got the center pulling some too. So now you got athletic guys up there. You really, the line has started to change over the past 2 to 3 years. So we'll see what Monk can, which way he decides to go with the run concepts.
And I think one thing that they could really do, and one concept I hope sticks that was kind of a Greg Roman, is the counter bash, and the way, that running back path is an outside zone running back path to try and set up those pullers. And the pullers are dictated by the defensive front. So if you end up, going counter right, and you got Linderbaum and you got Stanley pulling from the backside, that's going to create one heck of an athletic duo out there blocking for Lamar. So I'm really interested to see, will that concept stay? What concepts will stay in general? Are they going to run zone read? Are they going to stick with the veer? All that kind of stuff. But I'm just really looking forward to that kind of development. And then, behind Ronnie, I think this is where it gets kind of interesting. And I think the Patrick McCary factor is so intriguing to me, because we don't have a backup center with Sam Mustipher on practice squad. Now, is he going to be activated, called up? I don't even know the practice squad rules anymore, but that's definitely possible. He is back on practice squad, but if he's not and Linderbaum goes down in game, Patrick McCary is your backup center. So it begs the question, and one guy I want to talk to you about from you. I know you really dove into the O-line during the preseason. What did you see from a Daniel Faalele, who really was their swing tackle all through the preseason? He was switching drive to drive, left tackle to right tackle. What did you kind of think about him? Do you see him as kind of the left tackle in game? Is it still McCary? What are kind of your thoughts there on the backup left tackle situation?
With Faalele, I saw a lot of improvement from his rookie year. Now, with that being said, I didn't see enough to trust him on the left side. So if something happened where Ronnie went down, I would hope that they would still go with McCary. Now, if Moses went down, I think I'd be cool with Faalele playing that right side. But if Tyler Linderbaum went down, obviously McCary probably is that guy until the next game when they can activate Mustipher. But and I still have nightmares of McCary snapping high into the right and what happened to Lamar. So I really don't want him snapping at all. But because he's done it in the past, I can see where they looked at the position flexibility and made some of the moves they made. But as far as Faalele, he made great strides, from rookie year to sophomore year. And I think if he makes those same strides next year as far as the amount, I think he'll be a serviceable guy on the right side. But I don't think he's ready for left tackle yet. And if we do, we got to implement what Greg did. Just send all kinds of help over there. We were sending backs, tight ends, receivers, sent everything over there to help Faalele. And the crazy thing that was the first time he had played left tackle ever. In high school, college, ever. That was the first time playing left tackle in an NFL game with the Ravens, which blew my mind.
And that game against New England last year was, Mike, I've never seen two polar opposite halves where once he came in, it was like, I think he gave up 2 or 3 sacks in the first quarter that he was in. And I was like, okay, well, we're screwed. And then he settled in. And, I completely echo your sentiments. I was super excited with Faalele and seeing his development at right tackle specifically, because you really saw him more comfortable taking vertical sets. You saw him trying to mix in some 45s and some quicks to try and get his hands on guys, but he just looked more comfortable. But I noticed when he came to that left tackle side, what I noticed specifically was that outside hand, so his left hand, he was really struggling to locate that hand, and guys were, if Nolan Smith specifically in the Eagles game, a guy that can bend. And I mean, guys that can bend are always going to be a 6'9", 380-pound tackles, bugaboo. That's Trent Brown's bugaboo, and he's, still a top tackle. But that concern is a lot more worrisome because they're bending the edge of the blind side. Yeah. And so at left tackle, Lamar can't see that. At right tackle, he can cheat a little bit, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And that's really where I want to see his game develop a little bit more. I'd like to see him, and I saw a little bit of it this year because you could see guys attack his inside hand, trying to set him outside, and he was throwing the stop sign up with his inside hand a little bit better, but it didn't happen as well at left tackle. And I think that speaks a lot to what you said. He never played left tackle before.
His stop sign is massive.
I know. That is a claw. He gets his talons into you.
His stop sign is massive, boy.
Yeah.
But with that speed rush, anybody that's as fast as Nolan is gonna give him problems because he's so, that's where his size kind of hurts him. And the only people that will give him like super problems like that, you gotta have a Nolan Smith guy, and he gotta be fresh. Because once he catch him one time and choke slam him, all that speed stuff gonna probably end.
Yeah.
The thing is, whoever that person is has to be fresh, and he has to be legit fast, and or super bendy. You got to be a combination of both or super bendy. But once Faalele get his hands on him and can get a good choke slam on him, and Lord help him if he pancake him, they may not get up.
Yeah.
He had that. That's what 380-ish on top of you.
That first snap in that Commanders game when he caved in the right side and they ran Hill ran to the right. It was just power right, but he finished his man. And that was one thing that I did want to highlight with Faalele. He was a lot more mean in the run game this year.
Oh, yes.
In the preseason. Like, he was kind of like, I think Orlando Brown, in my opinion anyway, he got a little mislabeled because of his size and being Zeus Jr. But he wasn't always like a road grader, not to play a name on the YouTube channel, but he was more of a finesse blocker. Like, some of his down blocks, definitely he'd be flying guys, but some of the beautiful run blocks that he had were actually kind of getting him out in space and finessing blocks using his length really well. Whereas
a new term for him, he a position blocker.
That's a great way to put angle blocker. Yeah, he knows how to play angle, set guys up. And Faalele, I think, is learning, and he might have learned the hard way a little bit last year, that he's got to get his hands on guys and drive them, because as athletic he is for his size, he's just not athletic enough for the NFL standard of these defenders. And I mean, you watch the draft very closely. The 40 times and the shuttle times that these edges are running nowadays, like the Nolan Smiths of the world, like, it's scary. Like, they're running 4.4s coming off the edge. Like, I know they ain't running a 40-yard dash, but the athleticism just continues to climb and climb and climb. And so, we're going to start to see a little bit of a decline of these massive tackles unless they can adapt. So I'm really interested to see how Faalele continues to do that. That said, hope we don't have to see him unless he beats out Morgan Moses somehow. Definitely don't want to see him on the left side. I expect in game, I think if Ronnie were to go down or something terrible happens, I think it's McCary stepping in as long as he's not playing center. Yeah.
We just sim and blowouts. That's all. We're just sim and blowouts.
Yeah, exactly. And going into left guard, probably there wasn't a whole lot of position battles in camp this year for starting spots. The team was pretty set. But left guard was one of the big ones. And we had the acquisition last year, John Simpson, coming in. We had the rookie 6th-round pick that kind of surprised people getting starter snaps in Salah. And we had the fan favorite, we'll call him in this film room, in Ben Cleveland. And so talk me through a little bit, like, actually, let's start with Ben Cleveland.
Okay.
Why was he not in the battle to you? What do you see from that? I kind of have my thoughts, but I'm kind of curious, like, what would possess the coaching staff to not even give him an honest look?
Oh, I have no bleeping idea. Like, I don't understand. When you look at the only thing I can say is he has to just not be good on the left side. That's the last thing I've come to because.
But he wasn't horrible there last year when he
wasn't. When he played it last year, he wasn't. The little bit he got in versus the Steelers when I think Zeitler got hurt.
Yep.
JK had huge runs behind him.
Yep.
Then I didn't count the game where none of the starters played. That last what was that, Cincinnati game where we pretty much said everybody and they said a lot of people.
Yeah.
I didn't count that game. So really last year Cleveland played 14 snaps and JK had like 100 yards behind him 14 snaps with one leg.
See, and even Tristan Colon out-snapped him in that Steelers game where Zeitler missed. And I remember being shocked by that, especially because they then let Cologne walk, and he had center versatility, and they had to go get Mustafa. So I was just, that whole thing was so confusing. And the only time we saw Cleveland play left guard was last preseason.
Right.
And it's a preseason game, fair enough. But again, find me the snap. This is what drives me nuts about Cleveland. Everyone's like, he can't bend, he's stiff. Okay, he still wins his reps. I don't know what to tell you. Like, especially in pass protection, that you cannot find outside of the Jalen Carter snap, which is bad. Right. Outside of that snap, you can't find me, Ben Cleveland, being a liability in pass protection. It doesn't exist. Left guard, right guard. So, I have no doubt he definitely played better at right guard than left guard. And you know how difficult it is to change. And for those out there listening, if you want to know how difficult it is to go from one side to the other, go wipe your butt with your other hand. And that'll show you that muscle dexterity. But I still, to this day, the only thing I can come up with is coaches just didn't trust him to be a starter. And I don't know what happens in the locker room. I can only speculate. But
I made the video last year. Ben Cleveland, is your job to lose. That was the title. And obviously he came in last year, didn't pass the conditioning test, and took a couple times to do it, and he got in the doghouse. So is John Harbaugh that petty? Is that still why he didn't get opportunity? Because
that can't be.
When you look at the competition, Cole, that really wasn't a competition.
No.
You basically, and this is no shade on John Simpson. You want a job, I hope you do well, great, whatever. But that wasn't competition. When you look at the grades, nothing was close. So I'm looking at what the Commanders did to Salah, and what the Eagles did to Salah. What was the other team we played?
Eagles,
Tampa.
Commanders, Tampa.
And what Tampa did. Imagine what Michael Pierce did. 2 weeks they gave Salah first team snaps. Imagine what Pierce and Travis Jones and Broderick Washington, imagine what them boys was doing to Salah in practice.
He didn't even get hands on Matabike, did he? I've never seen clean lunge misses like that in a, like, it was worse than what we saw from Villanueva.
And I got a guy. I went to one of the practices this year, and the guy that sat with me and my wife, he lives about 8 minutes from the facility, and he went to 6 practices, and he said there at none of the practices he went to was there a snap where Ben Cleveland was on the left side.
Yeah,
not one. And he went to 6 practices. I went to 1, and so I take that as saying that what they took him inside the building and he played left guard. I don't think so. So he wasn't even in the category. It was Simpson and Salah, and not much of a race. It was a tortoise in the hare when actually the hare was really going to win.
Yeah. And like, I don't want to, I guess let's talk about Salah for a minute, because I'm curious. What did you see anything that suggests what can he get to with the proper coaching, proper development? And just to remind folks out there, he played right tackle for Oregon. Mm-hmm. He moved inside. Slow-footed guy. It was just another one. The Ravens love them a slow-footed tackle moving into guard. Very much Tyree Phillips-ish in a way. What did you see? Like, do you see potential there, or is this just another 6th-round pick? Is a 6th-round pick?
With Salah, all I see a lot of effort. I see a lot of want to. I see a guy that is not comfortable at guard yet, that doesn't understand how to use the leverage and whatnot, and is not really strong enough to be a guard yet. Maybe, after a year on the practice squad and NFL weight room and proper nutrition and whatnot like that, he'll be better next year. But I do like his effort, his energy and his effort. He seems to try hard. Like when he pulls like a bat out of hell. Now,
he's physical.
When he gets there, his hat placement may not be in the right spot, or his hands may not be in the right spot, but he gets there.
They aren't in the right spot, but he tried.
So his effort is there, and maybe with a year been on the practice squad, not the practice squad, a year of learning, he can be something down the road. But I think if he don't pick it up quick, when Voorhees gets cleared, because Voorhees got strength, and Voorhees is a guard already.
Yep.
So Voorhees may be, him and Cleveland's boot.
And that's why Cleveland had to come back this year. Like if they go into a game and you lose Simpson or you lose Zeitler, you can't. Salah can't go in. Like you can't, right? And Patrick McCarry's already kind of double duty with left tackle and center. So you're 2 injuries away from him playing. Like I honestly thought he was going to end up on the practice squad just because.
Salah.
I can't.
I had him being cut too in my 53. I had him being cut.
Who would have claimed him? Like it's not that I don't see anything there because I do. A guy that's going to come in and play guard and play physical is probably going to get there as a run blocker, and there's value in that in the NFL. It's just and I did a video on it. Like his hands are a mess. He couldn't hit his punch. He's lunging. I've never seen someone get swam. So like
the same move, Cole.
I just don't understand why he didn't just get to the point where it's like I'm gonna quick and I'm gonna sit in my anchor and just have a slow loss. Like the
same move. It wasn't like he got hit with spins or cross chops. It was bam, bam every time.
That white dude, the white nose tackle on the Bucks
Commanders,
hit him with the
Commanders hit him
the Commanders hit him with that swim move. I was like, there's no coming back from that, Salah. There's no coming back from that, Salah. But John Simpson, obviously a guy that I had a lot of issues when I went back and watched his Raiders tape. I was like, oh boy, we're in a tizzy here because I saw a lot of outside hand placement and giving up his chest and basically rep after rep of him just get hit like a tackling sled. So I was worried, but I was pretty encouraged. I noticed he used the same kind of hand placement throughout this preseason where he was hitting his outside hand up in the armpit and he kept using his inside hand as a hook. And he was forcing guys outside of him. And as they did, he was just kind of hand on the hip, trying to kind of walk them out the pocket, which I thought was encouraging because I saw a game plan, right? And that's what I didn't see with the Raiders. But overall, I mean, he had a really good preseason. There was really no blemishes. He had one snap that I found against the Eagles where he gave up his chest and got pushed back. But he didn't play I didn't really see anything with him against Jalen Carter. It was mostly Mojo on the Eagles that he was seeing. And but overall, what'd you think about John Simpson? How do you feel about can he play up to a Ben Powers level? That I guess is the key question.
Ooh, and it's crazy that you asked that question because who thought you'd ask that 365 days ago?
Crazy.
Who would have wanted to play at Ben Powers level a year ago? The crazy thing is with Simpson, he had a solid preseason. And the good thing about the people we played, for the most part, they played starters. For the most part, they played starters up front, except for the Commanders. Even though the Eagles play backup guys, they're still starters. Jalen Carter and the other cat, Jordan Davis, they gonna start at some point. So he got to see started. We had 2 starters to play in the preseason. It was him and Zay Flowers. So he was able to get reps. So I'm not as worried about him. I'm just worried about him as far as getting to fit with those 4 that already got a whole season together. That's what I'm worried about because on some double teams, I didn't see him getting hip to hip and coming off. And I just worry about the communication part with them because some of the same communication issues I saw, nonverbal communication issues I saw with Salah, I saw with Simpson. As far as being hip to hip, pushing guys off, or knowing who's going to get the second level guy, or even knowing when to let a guy go and go to the second level. So, but that comes with reps.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a lot of game reps as a team. So that stuff will have to play itself out Sunday.
Definitely. And one thing to remember, they didn't ask Ben Powers to do a whole lot of single blocking and pass protection last year.
Sure didn't.
They he was blocking air for the most part, and they instead asked the 210-pound soaking wet center Tyler Linderbaum. We'll talk about him next. Linderbaum was probably, and maybe this comes down to expectations after watching him. Last year, he was basically exactly what I expected him to be, even as a first-round draft pick. And that is, I expected him to struggle when he had to block the gauntlet of nose tackles we saw in pass protection. Mm-hmm. And I expected him to be a very, very good run blocker. That he's one of those players where you watch his college film, you watch his NFL film, it's all the same. Like it's the same player. He really is that type of consistent guy. And so that's what fascinated me about the whole Ben Powers, Tyler Linderbaum thing was just like, everyone's like, Powers is so good in pass protection. I'm like, he blocking anybody. Like,
Powers is sitting there with his hand out, checking for Linderbaum with his eyes, but sliding to Ronnie. That's what he was doing most of the year.
Every time. And so that speaks to where the coaches saw they could trust, who they could trust more. Not that they could trust Linderbaum, but and that's what gives me a little bit of comfort with the John Simpson situation when I watch his pass protection. I don't think they're going to ask him to kind of come in and be that single blocker. Like, it just wouldn't make sense to me, right? So we're probably going to see a lot of those naked reps where he's given help. And so I guess the question is, going into year 2, can Tyler Linderbaum better handle the power he's going to see from these nose tackles? Now, we're not going to probably see it on Sunday against Houston because they don't really play a true nose. They got Collins and they got
Rankin. They got Rankins.
Yeah, and they play, like, they'll play nose snaps, but they usually play.
They pretty play even front. If he's going to stick to what he did in San Francisco, they pretty much going to play even front.
Yeah, and I went through the preseason snaps too, and I think they had, between the two of them, I think like 4 nose tackles. It was pretty much D tackle charted reps. So this is a game where you're probably not going to see Linderbaum get attacked, but the AFC North filled with noses, we're going to see noses again. So what are your expectations for Linderbaum going into year 2?
So with Linderbaum last year, like you said, he run game wise, he was better than I expected. And even with those gauntlet of nose tackles, I expected him to struggle, but he didn't struggle as much as I thought he would. Like a DJ Reader, I thought would just constantly whoop him. Now Reader won reps, but it wasn't like a constant, I'm gonna beat your butt every play.
Same with Dexter Lawrence.
Yes. So what I think really helped him, and I didn't think it was going to help him as much, was that wrestling stuff, his wrestling background, because they would initially shock him, and his head would almost snap open like a Pez, but then he'd come on back, and he'd sink his hips, and then he'd just fight. Now, he may lose slow, even though he was still losing, but I'd rather him lose slow and give the quarterback an opportunity to figure something out, especially with it happening right in front of you. As long as you don't lose right now as a center, you should be okay with mobile quarterbacks back there. Should be. But in the run game, that something was way better than I thought.
One thing that shocked me was the way, if they were running like a 4th down and it was, let's even a QB sneak. There's one QB sneak where he passed off to the left guard and somehow he like sneaks up under, like you'd kind of expect to see from a linebacker attacking a gap. And Linderbaum just kind of pops up, and I'm like, where the fuck did he come from? Sneaky little dude just popping up. And that's really like it. The wrestling background was, and I remember talking about this with Michael Crawford, our guy. I expected it, like Quinnen Williams had some straight up wins on him in pass protection, but for the most part, when he was losing, and I'd kind of like to pick your brain on this too. I thought he really struggled processing stunts. That was something where I was like, that's a noticeable weakness. Yep. But in terms of just straight up taking on power, when you go through the Vita Vea snaps, you go through Dexter Lawrence, like slow losses was exactly how Michael Crawford put it. When we were talking about expectations, he was like, he'll have some slow burn losses, but the slow burn losses with a Lamar Jackson aren't like, they're not that big of a deal. Like, even though it's coming up the center, I don't think it disrupts Lamar like it would a Joe Flacco type situation where he needs to stand tall, right? And so that was something that I think is going to serve him really well. But yeah, I was kind of, what did you see on the stunt front? Because that was one area where it surprised me because I didn't notice that on his Iowa film. I never really was like, he's struggling to diagnose, but they sent the Giants game specifically, and we know Wink, he's a madman. They sent a lot of stunts his way, and him and Powers specifically really struggled to kind of communicate and work off of one another on those.
Just not getting depth and seeing it. They were too caught up in because our pass stuff was so run fake heavy that a lot of the play action stuff was happening at the line. So by the time the stunt happens, they have no depth to pick it up. So if they doubling down on, supposed to double down on somebody and it's a play fake, by the time he gets his eyes open, the stunner has already went by him because, again, we talked about it earlier. They're way faster now than the O-linemen.
Even the defensive tackles are running 4.7s.
Right. So, I mean, because what the kid from the Eagles, he ran a 4.3 at the combine.
Smith?
Yeah, Nolan ran a 4.3.
Yeah.
So those guys are 4.3 through 4.6s, and if you go too hard on your first block and don't get depth to see the stunt coming around, you won't get there.
Yeah,
and that's one of the few things, I forgot to say this earlier. That's one of the things Simpson had issues with too. A couple plays, he would get too caught up on, like, if the guy's trying to pick off Ronnie or whoever was playing left tackle, he get too caught up on that and not bring his eyes enough to pick up the stunt coming on the inside. So, but if that's Linderbaum's only problem, I can live with that because he do so much other stuff so well, and I think this year he'll be a year stronger to deal with the readers, to deal with Quinn's a whole nother. I think he on a whole nother level right now.
Yeah.
But everybody below his level, I think, would be good, and I think we're gonna be good with Linderbaum because he's gonna lose. He's still gonna lose because he's small. Let me tell you this little story. So when I went to camp, Faalele was standing. No, Linderbaum was standing in front of Faalele. I couldn't see him at all. So I had to walk as I'm walking to my seat and I get beside the O-line, that's when I see Linderbaum. Like, Faalele just completely engulfed him with his frame. And then when you see Faalele and Cleveland standing next to Linderbaum, you're like, whose son is this out here? That's how much bigger they are than Linderbaum, but he get in there and he fight his butt off, man. I was glad to be wrong about it.
Yeah, no doubt. And then moving down the line, we got Kevin Zeitler, Mr. Steady. One thing that I'm interested with Zeitler, I have no issues with him in the pass game. He's going to do his thing. He was great there last year. But I'm really interested when I look at the O-line and I think about more zone concepts. He's the one that kind of stands out where I'm like, I don't know. What do you think about Zeitler kind of in zone? What did you think last year? What do you think about him in the run game?
I think if we transition to an outside inside zone type deal, this is probably gonna be the last year for Zeitler here, because Zeitler is a old school lineman, down block, kick out. He's a gap lineman, good in pass pro, but he's not a zone guy. Not saying he can't do it, but his not his strength of his. And if we're gonna transition to a outside inside zone type of team, this probably would be. I know he said he wanted to stay, and I think this is his last year. He'll probably be up out of here, after this year. But he's gonna be solid for what we do because he can do the inside outside stuff, but he's just better at the down blocking and the pulling and whatnot for the gap schemes.
He's kind of like, I would say he's a lot like Linderbaum and Pass Pro, where he's going to work his ass off every play, and he's going to find ways as like the savvy vet to kind of get it done. But it is definitely an area, and I mean, we still saw they ran some gap in preseason. They definitely we still saw power. It wasn't complete shift away, but we saw more zone basically. Best way to put it.
I think we're gonna see all of the four major runs, and for me, that's inside, outside zone, counter power. I think we're gonna see a mix of all that. So don't go nowhere yet, Zeitler.
Which is the NFL now, and that's something that I don't think I've been clear enough when I've talked about kind of the run game and my expectations under Monken. It's not like a lot of these guys aren't just gonna go away from these concepts, or they like, even when you think about 2019 Titans and what Derrick Henry did so well. They still ran gap, even though they were running that insane outside zone and the way they run those boots off a zone. But they were still running gap. Every team runs a little mixture of everything. So that's where it really comes down to. And what might help Zeitler is, if they can empty out the boxes and take advantage of some of the spacing that you showed in your video, showing that first drive against the Bucks. And
yeah, that was a thing of beauty.
And so, that's going to empty boxes. It's gotta, right? Like, you can't sit can't sit 7-8 in the box against this 11 personnel group. So that's where I think we might just see, it might take us as guys that kind of get into the film, a little adjustment to a non-Greg Roman offense. Because I know that's something that I'm so used to watching, it's the beauty of his run game was how he created the matchups and still had everyone blocked with 8 guys in the box. Like that's just stuff that that's nightmare fuel for some run game coordinators, but for Roman it was his go-to.
It was regular.
Yeah.
Yep.
And backing him up, obviously, we don't need to begrudge him, but we got obviously Ben Cleveland, and that's a guy where if something happens to Zeitler, I'm pretty comfortable with Cleveland, and I think they'll be fine there. But then we move into one of the more interesting guys from last year. I thought Morgan Moses really struggled to start the year, and really struggled. And but I thought he settled in. And down the stretch, week 9, 10 on, thought he had himself a nice second half of the season. But again, you go through his history, he was always a guy who's going to give up 3 pressures a game, but he was never going to give up 6, 7. And that was kind of what I expected from him. But, what did you see from Moses last year? How much do you think we're going to have to give him some help? Is that part of why they kept Ricard around? What's your kind of thoughts there with Moses?
Well, according to a certain publication, Morgan Moses was better than Ronnie Stanley. We're not going to cite that publication, but according to a certain publication, Morgan Moses was in the top 10 percentile of O linemen over Ronnie Stanley last year. Now, with that being said, I like Morgan Moses in the run game. I do. I like Morgan Moses in the run game, especially as a puller trying to get to back to linebackers coming through. Not as the kick out guy, as the wrap guy. As a kick out guy, he kind of sucks. But as the wrap guy, him going through and seeking linebackers or safeties or whatever, somebody smaller than him, he does a good job of doing that. Now, like you said, with the pressures, he's gonna give up pressure. But the good thing is it's on the right side, and the quarterback can kind of see it coming because we don't have any left-handed guys. So that'll be the good part about that. But he's not gonna give up a boatload of sacks. He's gonna give up 1, 2 at most a game, but he's gonna be okay. He ain't gonna be the greatest right tackle, but you can't be great at every position. I think he's gonna be good for what we do.
Completely agree. I think that's the best way to put it, and that was why I love the signing. They were in a position where they just needed stability. They needed a guy that could come in and what you're getting every game, and he's consistent in being a slightly above average tackle, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's where, again, when I look around at some of the discussions, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Twitter about O-line play, I just think people expect 5 great O-linemen, and if you don't have 5 great ones, like even if you look at the Eagles last year, who had, I'd say, one of the better offensive lines in the last decade in terms of true and Samulo, he ended up getting paid, but I don't think he's going to be that guy anymore. He was that kind of average guy on an O-line. And I always say, if you're going to have one average spot, I want that average spot at left guard. That's just my personal opinion. And I think we'll definitely have that in John Simpson, but I think, and they did a lot of things last year with helping out Moses and they're going to give chip help. They got some running backs who can pass protect. They're going to use their tight ends. They're going to use 12 personnel. But you also want to be able to take advantage of what Monken does well. So they're going to ask him to single block TJ Watt. They're going to act like he's going to have to. They'll give help when they need to, but I think I think my biggest concern about this offensive line group as a whole is the expectation of more clean 5-man protections. I think that's probably the best way to summarize it.
That's gonna be tough. It's tough to 5-0 and be clean because it don't take but one guy losing for it to make the whole line look bad. So if you go 5-0 and TJ Watt, they slide him inside and he beat John Simpson, it make the whole line look bad. And you can't expect John Simpson to block TJ Watt like that. Or what if they have a team and they put somebody outside and they slide Cleveland? What's the dude on Cleveland?
Garrett.
Not Jason Garrett. Miles Garrett. They slide him inside on the guard. What can we do with any of the 3 we got in the middle? Nothing. Right. Ronnie's the only dude that can maybe do something with him. Maybe. So if anytime they take a elite pass rusher and slide him inside, and we have to do 5-0 protection, it's a chance that we may lose. But the good thing is we have mobile quarterbacks. And we now have an offensive coordinator that won't have 15 receivers in the same spot. And so when whoever is at quarterback breaks out, they'll have space to run and get down. It won't be they won't have 65 people chasing them. So the spacing is going to be the key thing, and not just with the O-line, it's going to be with the whole offense. You got, 3 guys at different levels on the left side. You got a guy in the middle. You got a guy on the right. And so if pass pro break down, the quarterback can get out and make a decision.
And that's where the making a decision is where I'm really interested to see Lamar in this new look, because I need him to take those checkdowns. Like when he needs them and they're there, and I need Monken to make sure that they're schemed up. But if they're there, I need him to take them, and that's going to be kind of the big differential. So I think that's a
load of yards, especially if you look at Eckler and you look at what Saquon do on the check down.
Yep.
You got a guy that can make people miss. So give him the ball. Get it out your hands, give him the ball, and let him he want more touches, let him touch the damn ball.
And even if Hill's in there we've seen Hill get in space and use his speed. We've seen he won't be back till after week 4, but Keaton Mitchell, when he gets out in space, he can do some fun things. And that's where, and even, they can use a drag with Zay Flowers and have him as a check down man. Like that's where I think the most interesting part of Todd Monken's offense is going to come from. I
was looking at the personnel and I was like, man, the things that Monken can do with just 12 personnel, with 10 personnel, which I think we'll never see, with 11 person is just, and because Likely and Mark are so versatile, the formations are endless. What he can do with it, whatever he want to imagine, he can do with it, because it's crazy.
No practice tape. Road Graders doesn't have the practice tape. I got sources, but I ain't got those. What up, Chris? And if you guys have any specific questions you guys have, send them in now. I'm kind of looking through some of the tweets. Overall, I'm kind of curious, what is your expectation? Like, again, I think the conversation around this O-line has been that they're league average. Is that how you view them, or how do you kind of view them comparable to the rest of the NFL?
I don't think they're league average, but I'm kind of biased too, because we had a different offense. Based off what we did last year, I think we were an above average offensive line. Now, when we got modern, so to speak, concepts, we'll see what we got for real now. So I think the jury's out on our O-line, but last year we were a good O-line based off of what we did. But now we got, like I said, a different offense, a more modern, up to date, of what everybody else does. We'll see what we have up front now, because they're going to be more solo blocks,
100%,
to see what you got. So
we're
gonna find out starting Sunday.
We were seeing max protect last year. I don't think, and that's contributed to some of the no one's open issues. You had five man coverages against 3 receivers when you're max protect. And that's where, like I said, with Moses, that's where I think his ability to just get out in space and block a TJ Watt, block guys like that, like it's tough work. And that's a long day for those guys, but that's what it takes to be an NFL offensive tackle. And I think that's why offensive tackle depth is down around the league. These edge rushers are freaks. The tackles now are becoming freaks. And these guys have to go out and just get it done. And it's long days at the office with these guys. So, I think I see the potential of a top 10 line here. I think how they square away 5-man protection looks, I think that will be the difference. But I expect them to run block well, especially if they're in a more balanced offensive system with zone concepts, with some of the things Tyler Linderbaum can do, where he's out there making a Devin White his son. That's where I really see the upside. Like, that Bucs game was beautiful. And got to remember there's still Lamar Jackson, and he's going to use his creativity, his pocket presence. He's going to make guys' jobs a little bit easier, and that is something that is a thing of beauty for these guys. So let's check down here. What Ronnie Stanley do you think we get? We talked a little bit about Ronnie. I'll give my opinion on this, and then, Coach, you let me know. I don't think we're ever going to see All-Pro Ronnie back. I think we're going to see really, really good Ronnie. I don't know if we're going to get back to All-Pro Ronnie. I don't know if he'll get there. But what do you think, Coach?
I think we'll get Pro Bowl Ronnie, but I think All-Pro Ronnie might be a thing of the past.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think
Pro Bowl Ronnie will suffice for what we need.
Definitely. Has Monken ever had a QB that got sacked a lot? I don't want to. I mean,
no doubt.
Not really. I mean, Jameis was an interesting decision maker, to say the least. But if you think about some of the things Jameis Winston did, he was throwing the ball and it wasn't getting hit while he was doing it. And I wouldn't say those Bucs O-lines were anything crazy. Now, I will say that Cleveland always had a good O-line. So that 2019 Cleveland line was definitely rock solid. But again, I think he did a lot of interesting things to get the ball out quick. And that's where I think Monken can have an impact on the offensive line. Asking them not like, I mean, it really does. You kind of said it, and it really kind of goes back to the same point. When your spacing's a mess and you got guys clumped up, you're asking your O-line to hold 5, 6, 7 seconds, and that's just not – no O-line's doing that, right?
Right.
So
that's crazy. It's I really – as far as the O-line as a whole, those guys, they just need to – they don't need to dominate guys. They just need to hold them off. Yeah. I don't think we because in the past we needed the O-line to dominate because we didn't have skill guys. Now we have skill guys. So just do your job like a normal O-line for 3 to 4 seconds. Let the skill guys do their thing. Because in the past we needed you to pancake and dominate in the run game. We don't need that now. We got guys that only need a little bit of daylight to scoot and do what they need to do. We got guys that can take quick game stuff and get on down the field. And then once we need to play action and go over top, that's when, those 5 or 6 times a game where you got to hold your water. So I think their job, I don't want to say it's going to be easier. It's going to be different.
That is the best way to put it. If I'm going to get what I expect from Todd Monken, I think he does make their lives easier. And I think that's a combination of both Monken and Lamar because, again, with spacing, lighter personnel, 5-man protections, you're presumably have less defenders around. So his QB designed runs may go down, but his scrambles could go up. And Lamar Jackson, and then the impact that has on the way a defense covers you, if you have to keep a spy in, well, that's opening up. How do you spot? This is what I was I put a tweet out about this. It's like, how do you cover the outside if you have Bateman, Zay, Odell, and the seam from Mark Andrews, and spy Lamar, and take away checkdowns? Like, there's not enough players on the defense to do it. And if there is, well, then it's consistent 3-4-man rushes. Yep. Your O-line's in a better position. So this is really where Greg Roman used to, like 2019, 2020, when the Ravens offense was so dominant, it was the opposite. He was bringing guys in, running it down their throats, and then throwing it over their heads. And now it's going to be what I hope is a complete shift, where I'm pushing guys out of the box.
Right.
That makes it easier to run, easier to hit seams and create one-on-one matchups. And now I have the dogs at receiver, at tight end, at running back to win those battles, catch balls, and get yak. And that's really where the difference could be. So it really is a massive, massive shift in offensive philosophy. It's really fascinating.
And that's why I think JK can match his total rush number this year. He got 1,300 yards total in 3 seasons. Well, 2 technically. I think he can get 13 just this season
with the carries. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you get like a nice 11 personnel spread, and then you are able to zone off that, there are not enough guys in the box. And the way he hit those cutback lanes at Ohio State, like that's something that could get real fun real quick if they're able to get that communication inside. So we'll take one more question and then we'll probably wrap it up here. So this is an interesting one because I think when we look at Zeitler and look at Cleveland and his skill set, and remember, Ben Cleveland played for Todd Monken. So, do you see Cleveland as better suited for Monken's scheme than Zeitler is? Could Cleveland replace Zeitler next year?
I think so. And the honest thing about Cleveland is we talked about Faalele earlier. Cleveland looked better at right tackle than Faalele to me. To me,
Yeah.
you know, but I still think he's a natural guard.
Yeah.
You know, but he looked. Well, I'm gonna say better. He looked just as good at Faalele at right tackle. But it depends on if because Zeitler and Cleveland kind of both are gapish guys. We were drafting. Cleveland got drafted because we were a power team. So with us going, if we do more zone and stuff, this may be Cleveland's last hurrah too, because he's more of a power guy. Like when he down blocks, he moved like you mentioned the rep earlier when Faalele down block. Cleveland was right beside him.
Oh,
Both
yeah.
of them caved that entire right side down. So he's a power guy. He struggles with the outside zone type stuff, at times. But the thing with Cleveland is he's so strong that even though he don't get his hands in the right spot, sometimes a flipper he'll knock you on your head. Like you may be going by, he just may shuck you, and you may go rolling because he can't get his hands in the right spot. But he's adapted to know that he doesn't have the great feet, but he knows he's strong. So I just got to get my hands on you and kind of get you to go beyond where you want to go. And that way, if the back is a real back, he can cut off whatever block I do. And as long as he winning, that's all that matters.
No, very well said. Very well said. Well, we'll wrap it up there, Coach. Thank you so much for joining us. Folks out there, if you don't know where to find Coach Evans' stuff, I mean, if you're following me, you're following Coach. There's no doubt about that. Sip2Tally on the YouTube. Incredible film breakdowns. I've learned so much from Coach over the years. It's been a thrill to follow your journey on YouTube and, learn from you and just kind of apply that to my own work. So thank you for all that you do for the community, all that you do for the film community. We love it. We love it. And that's all we have. So be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. Peace out, everyone.